Welcome to the Hidden Bookcase. Come in, have a seat, get comfy.
It's just next to the sliding library ladder and right below the shelf titled Urban Sci-Fi.
Pick a book, your favourite book, that's the one that opens this room. Inside you'll find a warm fire, a loving cat, and a wide skylight to the stars.
And a really towering to-be-read pile.
I'm Morgan, I use they-them pronouns, and I am a sentient plant man.
I'm Soren, I use he-him pronouns, and I am a robot with a nicotine addiction.
I'm MJ, I use she-her pronouns, and I am a mech suit with only a torso in it.
Soren and I have been friends for 10 years and are always swapping books.
But despite having the same taste in books, we never get round to reading each other's recommendations. It's always just another book on the pile.
It's a seriously big pile now. It might crush me in my sleep. So each month the two of us, sometimes with help from a friend, are going to read a book together.
The new reader, or readers in this case, will give us a blind summary of the book. We'll all go away and read it, and then we return to chat about it with you guys.
So this week, let's get to talking about
Dreadnought by April Daniels. So yeah, we're joined today by MJ.
Hello.
Who we both know through the Listless Network. Morgan, how do you know MJ?
Through the Listless Network.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, we all know each other through Listless.
Yeah.
If it wasn't clear from my American affectation, I don't think there's a way for us to meet in real life.
Yeah, we all vibe together on our gay little podcasts.
Oh, I love gay little podcasts. So, Dreadnought. Before I get into the introduction, I have a little tidbit about this book. This book was, I think, one of the first books that I found when I first realized that I was a trans girl, when I was 15-ish. And it messed me up. It was like way too close to home, you know? But I never actually got the book until much later when I could actually get things on my own. So when I finally actually did get around to reading it, I was surprised to find that I actually related more to the main character Deane now that I was older in comparison to back when I was a closeted trans girl. So here's the gist of it. This trans girl named Deane Tozer is painting her nails one day when all of a sudden the world's greatest superhero just gets knocked out of the sky and crash lands like 3 meters away from her, and she's like, dude, you're dying. And Dreadnought, who is the world's greatest superhero, is like, oh god dang it, you're just a kid, okay, here, just take my stuff, and gave her powers while also transforming her body to be her physical ideal, which was that of a cis girl. So she's like, oh my god, how am I gonna tell my parents? Oh my god. Deane kind of has to juggle being in the closet as transgender while also physically a girl.
Should we listen to our blind react?
Yeah.
So our next read is Dreadnought by April Daniels. Morgan, what do you know about it?
I know that it's queer. I know that the main character is trans femme. I know that it's a superhero narrative. I know literally nothing else about it. But we love that.
I feel like you shouldn't listen to it because I feel like I know more about it and I don't want you to... Should you know what I know?
I can take my headphones out.
Okay, yeah, you do that and then I'll like wave. I'll wave at
Okay.
you. Okay, so it is a superhero narrative. It is about a trans feminine superhero who takes over when the superhero who previously held that title dies. I think it's a little bit inspired by My Hero Academia, maybe, like All for One type thing. She becomes a superhero, but her powers transition her somehow, so then she gets like outed to everyone in her life forcibly. And some people are okay with that, some people are less okay with that. I think the narrative focuses on that quite a bit. And there's also a cyborg who I believe is the villain. And I just happen to know that detail. I don't know why, and I'm pretty sure it's set in the future.
That was a lot of info. I don't know what it was about, but that was a lot. So I'm very curious.
Well, you'll find out. Okay, well, let's just stop it there. Very chaotic times.
How did you know so much about this book? Sorry.
I had also seen about it on Tumblr. That was how
Oh
I
my
Yeah.
god. It's Tumblr. It's the Tumblr.
I soaked in some more information somehow.
Drawing the connection to My Hero Academia, I hadn't actually watched MHA at the time, but reading it later on, I was like, holy, Dreadnought literally is just All Might.
To be fair, I guess it's not a super uncommon hero origin story. Being like, oh, it's like My Hero Academia is a little bit reductive. Miles Morales often has like a similar thing.
True.
It's a classic, inheriting the mantle.
Yeah.
I did say that some people were okay with it. I don't really feel like anyone was okay with it.
There was one person who was okay with it, and that was Calamity, because Calamity is the best.
Yeah.
Oh, and Doc Impossible.
But like
Yeah.
no one who knew her before, which is a little bit sad in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. First off the bat, I thought this was YA.
I think it technically is.
I don't think it counts as YA.
It feels super heavy.
It's very heavy if it's YA.
Oh,
Like, I
yeah.
know it's about teenagers, but this did not feel like I was reading a YA book the entire time. I was like, I had to put it down multiple times because I was like, this is a bit much.
It's marked as YA on Goodreads, Amazon, and various others.
Okay.
So apparently that is how it's categorized. Yeah, I was also very shocked.
It says YA on the back as well, so...
Are YA novels allowed to have, like, slurs in them? Because I remember seeing, like, at least 6 of them.
That's what I was thinking.
A bit of a surprise, but, you know, it needed to be looked at, needed to be talked about.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Just a big not expecting it. Big should have read the content warnings first.
Yeah, the cover's not the most threatening looking thing. It's so inviting, like, oh, I've got the superhero cape on, and oh, there are trans colors in the sunset. And then you just hear, like, slur, 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 slur. And you're like, Danny, are you okay?
Objectively, the answer is no.
Not even Danny. April Daniels, are you okay?
I was scanning an interview and I think she said something about wanting to write a super fun trans teen superhero thing, and then in the process of writing, Danny's parents showed up and it just ended up evolving naturally and becoming a lot darker than she'd intended, which, yeah, I can see how that happens.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to know favorite characters.
Morgan, after you.
Me first? Okay. Can I say Valkyria was my favourite? Because I loved her. She's just so chill. Everyone has a crush on her, and I'm like, same dude. I'm Maro Ace, and I'm still like, same dude.
Same though, God. Valkyria is so cool. It's so sad what happens to her.
Literally. I'm so, like, can we talk about that for a second? I know we're jumping, but like...
Go for it.
April was just like, yeah, I'm willing to kill f***ing everyone.
I'm sorry, but I appreciate a lot of what happens in this book actually having permanent consequences. But you killed off half the cool characters. And why did Grey Witch have to survive? The one turf in the book. Can you not, like, get rid of her, please? But yeah, Valkyria was my favourite. Soren, who's yours?
I think Calamity / Sarah. I liked her little alter ego. She had Chulery when they introduced her, so I was like, ooh, maybe autistic character. Could be an anxiety thing, but...
I think it's pretty much guaranteed that she's autistic.
Yeah. The flirting with Danny was fun.
Yeah.
She was a good character for Danny to bounce off, I think.
Oh yeah. And it's really interesting to see the dynamic between Danny and Sarah in the first place, because Danny is objectively more powerful in this instance, and yet she was the sidekick.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that, how the dynamic changed and how Danny had to work her way up to being the hero and saving Calamity.
Yeah. Oh god, that scene with the reality unmaker.
That's such a good superpower for a villain to have, and it's so creepy. I really want to read the second book. I want to see Calamity being awesome and also only having one arm. I think that would be so interesting and cool to see. Possibly my second favorite character.
I think, for me personally, my favorite character, behind Danny, because soft spot, is Dr. Impossible. The fact that Dr. Impossible was willing to create an artificial nicotine addiction just to convince herself that she was human, that hits different.
Yeah, that did get me in the angst department.
It is very cool to see there's so many cool women in this book.
Oh, yeah.
Especially superheroes, obviously very male-dominated genre.
I cannot think of a single male superhero that does a single thing in this book aside from Dreadnought.
Well, I mean, he dies, so...
I mean, yeah, he dies.
He got fridged. Oh my god, we're really just flipping. I don't think that counts as fridging, but you know what I mean.
Fridge the men. Turn
Exactly.
it back on them.
0 men, let's go. Yeah, I mean, I think the only men that are relatively important to the book tend to be like Chlorophyll, Magma, Bosco, technically?
I guess Danny's father.
Danny's dad, yeah.
As an antagonist, yeah.
I was fully prepared for Danny's dad to be the antagonist, the full antagonist, not like a secondary one. I was fully prepared for him to be like, haha, I am actually Utopia.
I really did like the chapter where Bosco is getting ready to quote-unquote kill Danny's father and Danny's moral conflict of, yeah, I do actually want him to die. She addresses a little bit that she thinks she's a horrible person, but it's a very minor thought because most of the time she's like, yeah, I've had an awful life because of this man, actually f*** him. It's interesting to see a character who doesn't moralize back into themselves, sticks to it. Especially for YA, it's usually quite black and white morality. Really interesting to see her stick to her guns on that one.
That's another thing that I absolutely love about this book is the entire time Danny is trying to be a good person, but she doesn't act like a good person all of the time. I mean, some of the thoughts that she has are kind of a bit abysmal. Her entire justification of trying to act more confident and be more confident because of the fact that she has those powers is a little god complexy.
I think it's interesting that she's not that interested in becoming a hero to begin with. She's kind of like, well, I want to keep my transition, but I don't really know if I want to do the whole Dreadnought thing.
Yeah, it gives the book so much more plot potential.
It's the character growth.
So true.
Can we talk about the airliner scene?
I was waiting for you to bring up the airliner.
You can literally picture it so cinematically, and like the fact that she's tearing her body apart, and it's so viscerally described. Oh, it's such a good scene.
Looking back on it, I was like, you know, this book actually has really good action scenes, especially for a book that I thought would mainly be about trans stuff.
It's a good genre blender.
It is a good genre blender, and it does an interesting thing with the whole instant transition thing, because that's a fantasy that I've had, and I know that a bunch of people have had before, but I haven't really seen it done to the effect that Dreadnought has done it.
One that does come to mind is Wrath Goddess Sing by Deane. That book also has the instant transition, but the way that it treats it is suddenly the character of Achilles becomes a cis woman, basically, in the eyes of everybody who talks to her and interacts with her, including other trans women.
Oh.
It's very odd. It's no longer about the trans femme character. It's about a cis woman facing misogyny. So actually holding to your guns, exploring the transphobia that comes out through transition and exploring interacting in the world, passing as a trans femme person was really, really interesting. And I really, really enjoyed that plotline.
I think it was handled a lot better here than in Wrath Goddess Sing, which to be fair, I DNF'd, so I didn't finish it. But I guess it's also that she hasn't transformed into cis. She's just had like a really fast, more effective than you could possibly imagine transition.
With surgery included. That scene of her just going around the mall and realizing why her transition is the way that it is, I felt a little called out on that specific part, because it's like, okay, but would I do anything different though if I was given the same circumstances? And it's like,
I think if you went up to any 13-year-old girl and said, okay, you can look the way you want to look, you would get people playing into those beauty standards. That's like a universal thing.
And not shying away from that and actually sort of exploring it.
Yeah,
exactly. Oh, you know what? Speaking of not shying away from and exploring certain things, I'm actually glad that David wasn't forgiven.
Oh, yeah.
I am glad that that plotline ended right at chapter 10-ish, and it was just like a good example of how when you come out as trans, you're gonna lose a lot of friends. Just in a way that I wasn't expecting to see.
I'm glad it was a short plotline, because on the back of the book it seems like it's going to be quite a long plotline, coming to realize that either the best friend is going to be forgiven or he's going to be dropped. But I'm glad that it was just like, no, he's unforgivable. Goodbye.
No, yeah.
Very cathartic, very good.
He's just straight up a bit of a creep. And I'm glad that Sarah at least acknowledges that and is like, hun, you made the right choice. If he gets better, he gets better. But right now, he's a creep.
And like exploring Danny's guilt about not noticing it beforehand, because it wasn't directed at her, was really good.
Exactly. The other interesting thing about that is when David is like, look, dude, I need to bone. Please, let me smash. Please, I'm begging you. And then Danny's like, dude, I am literally the same exact person. You know I'm a lesbian.
That whole scene where Danny's like, I'm gay. And he's like, oh, that's great. That's cool. That's fine. And just like absolutely no mental capacity going on in his brain at all.
I've literally had that kind of encounter where I've said that I'm gay and people have assumed that that meant that I liked men, knowing that I was a trans woman. And it's like, what? That's not how this works. This is a women and NB only train.
No, people do totally conflate it. Like, I remember coming out and people being like, can't you be a lesbian? And I'm like, well, that would be extremely difficult for me, considering that I like men. And that's not how it works at all, actually.
It's so weird. There's also a bit of a level of like transmisogony element that isn't really talked about a lot in a lot of trans narratives that I really appreciate from the David plotline.
I do wish that we had had a little bit more of David and Danny's friendship beforehand.
Yes.
It does get resolved very quickly, and from a reader's point of view, that's quite nice because you get to just sort of forget about David, which, thank God. But
yeah,
that was Danny's only friend prior to transition, and then she did lose him, and she does have Sarah, so great. But there must be some grief there.
But, like, Sarah isn't a friend.
Exactly, and Sarah isn't even a friend. Sarah is like a love interest, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another plotline that I really find interesting with this one was with Sarah and her dad, Ricochet. The Legion Pacifica working to prosecute him and is basically the reason why he's behind bars. And it brings up some really interesting questions like, would a society run by superheroes be as police state?
The Ricochet plotline felt reminiscent of the Isaiah plotline in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Actually exploring the fact that people of color are abused by the state. When it comes to superpowers in a racist society, like that is what would happen. I feel like it could have been touched on a little bit more because it was kind of just like brought up and then Danny was like, yeah, that sucks. Anyway, hopefully more happens in book 2, but yeah.
I think it probably will happen a little more in book 2 because it was introduced way too late in the book for it to not be a book 2 thing.
When Danny brings it up with Doc Impossible, then Doc Impossible reveals that apparently Ricochet did kill someone on camera, and Doc Impossible says it definitely wasn't doctored footage. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was still Ricochet's own free will there. There's a lot of weird superhero things going on.
Yeah.
I'm very suspicious that Ricochet was under somebody's control there, which I assume would be a thing that would come out in book 2.
I mean, we know for a fact that Grey Witch can force people to do things they don't want to do. So...
Exactly.
Grey Witch.
Yeah. Oh, she made my skin crawl. This book was written before everything started happening.
Yeah, it feels very predictive.
Yeah, this was written in like 2016, I think.
Released in 2017. So
there are a lot of superhero tropes that are used here that weren't really overplayed in 2016 that are kind of interesting to see, especially with Dr. Impossible's twist. I feel like that is something that would be very commonplace in a lot of MCU movies and whatnot, but here it feels genuine, more unique, I guess, if only a little rushed.
Would have definitely like more build up to that. But it's so nice to find a superhero book that feels unique. I've read a fair amount of non-MCU superhero stuff, and a lot of it does feel very similar, very tropey. But this felt very fresh. Can we talk about the writing style? This is a very specific thing, but the use of the dashes as like paragraph changes, especially in the transition scene, I thought it was so fun. I really enjoyed it. It was such a dynamic way to write.
It's so easy to imagine a flash of everything everywhere all at once happening in Danny's mind all at the same time.
The description of how she like mentally construes her powers was very easy to follow. Which I think is difficult because you're talking about atoms.
The lattices.
The lattice is it's a very good way of explaining it.
As a magic system, it's so interesting, so fun, so unique.
Also, the fact that magic does exist within the world, I feel like that's something that's going to be touched on a little more in Sovereign.
Sarah's Witch X, that was a fun scene.
That was a fun scene. Also, the fact that magic can work with computers, I love it so much. God, magic in a lot of fictional media tends to be very, very specific about not interacting with anything beyond the Industrial Revolution. So it's nice to see the pendulum thing actually working with a digital map.
Now that you point that out, yeah, most things will just do magic and technology are fundamentally incompatible. So it is really cool to see like a different take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, would love to see more.
Also, can we talk about how absolutely dorky Danny is as a character? We don't really get to see a lot of her interests in the book because we start directly off with her becoming Dreadnought. But throughout the book, there are just little bits and pieces that you can tell that Danny is an absolute dork. I think my favorite part is when they're in the warehouse and she's like, yeah. She is very fundamentally a lighthearted person, and I do like that her personality is preserved.
She genuinely does feel like a teenager rather than like an adult who was supposed to be convinced as a teenager.
Maybe I just don't read the right books, but it's rare to find a first-person narrative where the main character actually feels distinct.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time first-person narrative sort of shortcuts having to actually talk about the main character. It was really nice to see her character actually coming through. The thought processes she was going through, there was a lot of it on the page. I really liked that.
It lends itself to a lot of really powerful scenes, like in chapter 7, right at the end, after she's talked with her dad and she's just like sitting in that cloud crying. That definitely feels like it's part of her character.
That was such a good scene. One thing that really stressed me out, the whole climax of the book, was the fact that she hadn't eaten in like 24 hours. And like, it was really stressing me out. I was like, where's the energy coming from, babes?
Adrenaline.
Please go and eat some food. Steal some if you have to, but you're going through this entire climax battle and you haven't eaten.
As soon as it ends, doesn't she ask for pizza?
Yes.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. It just was in the back of my mind whilst I was reading that whole scene. I was like...
I'm so glad that that wasn't skipped over too. They actually did acknowledge, oh, she like is hungry and is homeless, which is a reality for a lot of trans people.
It's interesting bringing a character to that place, worst case scenario, worst nightmare for a lot of trans people, and then her at the end of the climax coming out in front of loads of people saying, I'm a trans lesbian and I'm not ashamed of that, is a very cool reversal of fortunes, if you like.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any quotes that they wanted to share?
I have one quote, but it's more that it impacted me in a feelings way and in a, oh, this is the tone of the book way than anything else.
Go for it.
Whilst the coming out to her dad is happening, and she says, I'm fighting to become safely dead inside.
Ooh, yeah.
That was a big oof.
Mm-hmm.
That was like halfway through the book. But literally on page 9, this quote really got me. The dirty little secret about growing up as a boy is if you're not any good at it, they will torture you daily until you have the good graces to kill yourself.
Oh, I fucking love that quote. Do you know why? Because it's true. It's so fucking true.
Yeah.
That was one of the quotes that really made me latch on to this book when I first found it. I don't have any specific quotes. I do, however, remember the final fight, the final tug of the lattices to try and forcibly heal factor herself. She's so dead at this point. She almost literally dies. She hasn't had food. She has been putting herself under ridiculous strain through the tugging of the lattices, which that part I did kind of see happening from a little bit of a ways away, but that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the imagery of it.
The healing factor actually costing her. Every time she puts a thread together, a different part of her body snapping. It was so visceral. It's like a good way to level out how omnipotent she could be. Soren, do you have any quotes?
There was one or two bits that I hitched me a little bit. It's interesting as well because we were mentioning before Sarah becomes disabled at the end of the first book. Then there's a bit where Danny's interacting with Gerald and she makes a comment about how he doesn't have any arms now and she's like, oh, you can't even wipe off you. And I was like, that feels a little bit... Well, I mean, obviously she's a teenager.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of things, like having a supervillain called Crystal Knocked really threw me. I did try and seek out a review written by a Jewish person that touches on this just to get that perspective, but I couldn't find anything. But at least from my perspective, I would not be comfortable reading a supervillain called the Jallianwala Massacre or Bloody Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I think Daniel's definitely unflinching. She's like, I'm going to address transphobia, I'm going to address racism in governmental structures with Sarah's dad, especially considering that it is YA. It's a little bit messy occasionally, but I do appreciate that the effort is there.
I had a little bit of a similar iffiness when talk about World War II was happening. The super soldier program being named the Übermensch, that felt a little weird to me. Obviously, I can't really put my 2 cents into whether it deserves a pass, so I'm not going with that in consideration. At least it's not a big part of the book. That's just a world-building detail.
But I'd rather that someone makes an attempt and puts their foot in it a bit. Just could maybe have used a sensitivity reader.
At least there is consideration put into it, because alternate history can go very quickly, very wrong.
I know what you're thinking about right now.
Wait, what are you thinking about specifically?
I don't know what Soren thinks I'm thinking about.
I thought you were thinking about Rowling's deal with World War II.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. Oh
Yeah.
god, no.
So actually considering it and sort of putting more than 5 seconds of work into it, it's more than most authors will do, but people should still do even more.
I feel like if Daniels made this book now, considering the culture that we have around queer fiction that's kind of changed since 2017, I feel like maybe those mistakes wouldn't have been made.
And also, obviously, the rest of the trilogy has been published more recently.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a shift.
Yeah, I think there probably is going to be a little bit of a difference there.
We want a final thoughts?
Do you want to go first?
I rated this 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had researched it a bit more before reading it. There was a bit of a tonal dissonance between the humour and the darkness that just kind of threw me off a little bit, but I really enjoyed it. It's a seminal piece of 2010s queer literature, I feel like, so I'm really glad to have read it. Would recommend.
MJ?
This book has a very special place in my heart simply because of the time that I found it. Being a little older and reading it is a little different. I'm able to look at it without as much of the rose-tinted glasses that I had for it, but even without that, I feel like the book does a great job of talking about a lot of aspects of the trans femme identity that I like to talk about, and I feel like do not get discussed as much in a lot of queer spaces because a lot of trans femme stuff isn't really talked about. Even as a superhero book, I feel like this is like a really good read. It doesn't shy away from a lot of the elements that make superhero books really fun, which is the bombastic nature of everything. This main character just so happens to be an android. Oh, this guy is a literal plant. It really kind of acknowledges some of the sillier aspects of superheroes and looks at it from a lens of what would it be like to actually live in a world like that really well. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Nice.
I really enjoyed reading this. I think it's a 3 for me just because I had some pacing issues. Some of the emotional moments, I kind of wanted to let them breathe a bit more. Reading it, I personally kind of felt an element of desensitization simply because there was so much happening to Danny in such quick succession, and it made it more difficult for me to connect with the narrative emotionally, and I think it undermined the themes a little bit. And on a more technical level, sometimes the prose and the dialogue just didn't quite gel with me. But then, I really respect what it's doing. I love that it is a trans superhero. Like, that's so cool. And again, that it touches on all of these things that usually get swept under the rug. Even within queer spaces, you don't hear these conversations, unfortunately.
Do you have any recommendations?
Are we going backwards?
Yeah, let's go backwards.
Okay. If you liked this, then I definitely recommend you read the Not Your Sidekick series by C.B. Lee,
Yes.
which are also just queer superhero books. They feel like long lost cousins, very reminiscent. First one is sapphic, second one has a trans protagonist, third one has an ace protagonist.
Oh, I love that.
Very unapologetically queer, fun spins on the superhero genre. The protagonist of the first book, her big sister is the big superhero, whereas she doesn't have any powers, apparently. More lighthearted than these, I think.
Definitely.
MJ?
I am going to recommend the Reckoners series, starting with the book Steelheart. If you like a lot of the darker aspects of Dreadnought, you would probably like Steelheart because it is straight up superhero decay. Everybody's bad in that. It's interesting seeing a lot of the world building, a lot of those darker aspects of the superhero experience touched on there. It's really cool.
There's a Brandon Sanderson, is that right?
Yes, forgot the name of the author there for a second.
Morgan, do you have any recommendations?
Definitely read anything by Charlie Jane Anders, any of her books, because they are very good. I didn't notice that she literally has a quote on the cover, and that made me very happy when I realized that, because I love her. But for a specific superhero exploration, I'm going to recommend Hench by Natalie Zena Walshots, which is basically about a woman who works as a henchman for different villains. She's injured by one of the main quote-unquote superheroes, and she sort of goes on this tangent in becoming a villain to sort of figure out that actually maybe the superheroes are doing more damage than the villains. And it's very reminiscent of The Boys. I would also recommend that to people because it's a very good critique of the superhero genre and of consumer culture in general. What would actually happen if people actually had superpowers.
I think that's everything. Thank you so much, MJ, for joining us and being our second guest. It was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really happy that I got to join you guys. This was very fun.
Is there anything you want to tell people to go look out, listen to?
Obviously, I'm gonna say listen to The Children of Room 56 on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But for personal projects, I actually am currently working on a horror anthology podcast. I am co-producing it with Zoe Davis, who was the guest on the Gideon the Ninth episode. Whoa, that's crazy! We are co-producing and co-creating a show called Whitman and Sons, which is going to be a kind of pseudo-anthology in a similar ilk to the Magnus Archives, but isn't afraid to be its own thing. Has a lot of Gravity Falls elements to it as well. There's going to be more information about that coming out as we get further into production. Follow Listless to get all the information about that when that finally comes out.
So next month, we're going to be doing childhood favorites. Very excited to do that for December. Chill vibes for the holidays. So I'll be forcing Soren to read Secret of the Sirens by Julia Golding. And I won't say anything more about it, except that it shaped me as a child. Until then, you're always welcome through the bookcase.
Don't forget to scratch the cat on your way out. Thank you for listening to The Hidden Bookcase, a production of Planar Prod. On this episode, you heard Moira-Juliet Scott, Morgan Greensmith, and Soren Briarwood discussing Dreadnought by April Daniels. You can find out more about this book at aprildaniels.com, and you can follow April Daniels on Tumblr at Miss April Daniels. Thank you so much to MJ for your appearance on the show. It was truly super to have you. You can follow her at MJ Rami on Twitter and on Instagram. You can find her work over at the Listless Network at listless.ga, including information about queer horror show The Children of Room 56, for which she's director, script editor, and voice of Calliope Morris. Information about her upcoming horror anthology podcast, Whitman & Sons, will be available there in due course. But for now, you can follow along with the show's development at Whitman Sons Pod on Twitter. You can find the Hidden Bookcase on Twitter at Hidden Bookcase, and on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and TikTok at Hidden Bookcase Podcast. Find out more about Planar Prod at planarprod.com. If you're interested in chatting to us about your favourite book, go to planarprod.com to find our form to apply as a guest, or you can just email us at thehiddenbookcase@gmail.com. If you're enjoying The Hidden Bookcase, please consider leaving us a rating or review, or you can always tell a friend how to find us. Your whispers are the best way for bookworms to discover our show. In December, we're rereading our childhood favourites. On our next episode, which will be out on Monday, the 5th of December, we'll be discussing Secret of the Sirens by Julia Golding. We hope to see you then, and in the meantime, you're always welcome through the bookcase.